This is my capstone voiceover over the representation of Latino students in gifted and talented programs. In partial fulfillment of the requirement for the degree of Master of Education by Jennifer Garcia, this December 2019. I will begin with the introduction of this project. The purpose of this capstone project is to focus on the Latino student population and research their representation in gifted and talented programs. According to her 2018, the enrollment programs are not being diversified. He explained that assessments, oftentimes contentious, along with educators who are not prepared to teach students of different cultures and languages, are highly associated with this phenomenon. The achievement gap that exists between Latinos and whites is by no means a new concept, though. Many efforts have taken place in efforts to close the gap, but rather, this topic has only become more subtle throughout the years. The Latino student has continued to increase over time, but even so, this racial group has continued to be underrepresented in advanced academic programs. This brought me to the question of, is there disproportionate representation of Latino students in GT programs? My project was simplified down into 4 main points. The first one, the racial representation of students in GT programs. Number 2, school policies and procedures. Number 3, the curriculum of the GT students. And number 4, the lack of teacher preparation for gifted and talented students. I will begin with the racial representation of students in GT programs. It is found that students of low SES are disdained and are not given equal opportunities in GT programs. As mentioned earlier, this population has increased over time, but for some reason, the Hispanic population continues to be underrepresented. In addition, the research suggests that equal representation in the advanced academics community have never been present. In fact, there is a difference between the Hispanic population and GT makeup of these programs. Other sources have validated this idea. My next point in my project was school policies and procedures. There were 3 things that stood out from this project. 1, it needs to be re-examined. Number 2, they need to use alternative assessment tools. And lastly, if not included, they will not achieve to the best of their ability. Research suggests that the process for identifying bilingual GT students in schools needs to be re-examined, of course. Bilingual students, in fact, hold unique cultural backgrounds that can be overlooked by teachers who are not from the same culture. I work for the district of Alvin ISD, and the district itself states that students are to be assessed in multiple areas, including quantitative and qualitative methods. Many people have the opportunity to recommend a child for testing, parents, peers, teachers, and students themselves. But in the Latino culture, it is highly unlikely for a Latino parent to question authority or to advocate for their child. For example, my parents were never the ones to question the authority given by the school. In fact, they agreed with every decision that was made. But what we see nowadays is that the parents, especially for the white students, advocate a lot more for their child if they were to not be qualified for a GT program, or if they aren't considered to be in the cluster class. This is another main point that was brought up throughout the research. The next point is the curriculum of GT students. It was found that the curriculum for those students is biased, and that there is an unwillingness to change the curriculum, and in addition, that critical thinking skills are promoted through this curriculum. Teachers are graduating from a teacher-ed program with a certain perspective already engraved in their head. This is because the classes that they're taking don't take into consideration all races and all cultures that could possibly consist of the GT population. Instead, they're only focusing on that one small portion, and so when it is time for them to go out into the real world and put their knowledge to work, there is a big gap between these white students and these Hispanic students as well. Although all students in public schools are being challenged to think more critically and develop higher order thinking skills, those that are in the GT classroom will follow a 70 method that will maximize the engagement of those students in their learning. But what about the students that are not? What about those students that did not qualify for whatever reason? That is a big question that was brought up in the research, and that continues to be a question throughout. What do we do? What can we do for those students that are Hispanic, underrepresented, low SES? And another point was the lack of teacher preparation for GT students. It was found that the teachers were not prepared to teach students whose first language is Spanish, that there was a push for more culturally relevant teaching, and that relationships play a major role. What I mean by teachers not being prepared to teach students is that, as mentioned, they take courses, they take classes, they go to trainings, but that all overlooks the Hispanic population. Although it is a topic that is brought up in school and trainings, we have to focus on our students who are underrepresented, who are of low SES. What are we actually doing in the classroom to promote that? What are we doing to benefit them? Teachers, in fact, aren't fully aware of this issue when they're taking their courses during their program. There is no book that you can follow that says exactly how students will behave, every single thing that will happen in your classroom day by day. Instead, what we can do is be more prepared, attend these trainings that could possibly benefit us, and for the presenters, make sure that we are actually giving teachers valid information, not just information that's only going to fit into one small category. For my methods section, I found it very interesting from the research found in ProPublica. ProPublica is actually a very useful online resource when looking for specific data in a school. When I came across this at a GT training this summer, and it was such a very good tool that I brought it up to my GT specialist at my school. What's really great about it is that it tells you not only the population of the school, of the races, but it also tells you how much percentage of that school is of low SES, how much of that school is consists of gifted and talented. So if I click on that link, it will take me to the ProPublica website. And I already had Mary Burke's Merrick Elementary pulled up because that is the school where I currently work at. So, for example, here it tells you the school name. It tells you their address, their contact information, things as such. But right here, I want us to pay really close attention to the school composition. As you can see, we have a 30% Black population, 14% Hispanic, 22% white, 27% Asian, etc., and 3% two or more races. Now, of course, there is a racial divide. But what stood out to me the most was the gifted and talented composition. As you can see, only 10% of those 33% students are in the GT program. 10% of the 14% are Hispanic. 32%, 22, 45, and 2%. That means out of the whole school, only 10%, specifically looking at them, make up the GT program at our school. And if I were to type in another school, for example, Bear Creek Elementary, let's see, what's one in Texas? If we look at this one, we can see that the school is composed of 71% Hispanic students. Now, one would expect that with such a huge population of Hispanic students, the GT population would mostly consist of Hispanic students. But if you look closely right here, the gifted and talented composition only consists of 50% Hispanic and 50% white. This says a lot about the GT composition in schools. And this was only 2 schools that I looked up. I could look at a lot more and you would find a pattern, which is that the Hispanic population continues to be underrepresented. Going back to my slide, I created this table based on information that I found from the ProPublica website. Here are the results that I found. For example, here was my school. The district is listed right here. Composition of Black students, Hispanic, white, Asian, and 2 or more races. I want to look specifically at the Hispanic population compared to the other races. At my school, only 10% make up the GT population, while 32% of them are white. Same with this school from Spring ISD. 33% are Hispanic and 33% are white. And if we look at Fall Creek from Humble ISD, 15% as compared to 58%. 33% compared to 48%. The list goes on, but what you notice between these and these is that no matter what, we continue to be a smaller percentage. So what does that say? To conclude, I have to mention that we need to do something about closing the achievement gap. We need to stray away from the one-size-fits-all as well. Every student is different. Every student learns differently. So we cannot continue to use that same method, same curriculum for all students if it does not apply to them. This achievement gap will continue to exist between the white and Latino students. If teachers, for example, are not properly trained to identify gifted students, the Latino students stand at a higher risk of remain underrepresented. Reform must take place in order to provide all students. We need to find appropriate professional development as well as better identification measures. After all my research, I can conclude that my theories clearly match the literature that I found. Once I began looking deeper into the Hispanic population amongst GT programs, I found that the percentage of Hispanics was lower than other races. As I mentioned, this was a common pattern in all the data I found, and it led to make similar conclusions to the literature. Of course, it connected to the 3 themes of the professional seminars: social justice, leadership, and best practices. Leadership is something that comes from all people, not just teachers. And that is why I'm saying that we can all do something to provide a better education for all students instead of just one. I strongly believe that we must work towards removing these barriers that will continue to underrepresent the minority Latino population. We can't expect big changes to happen from one day to another, but what we certainly can do is do our part of begin raising awareness of this issue.